I'm beginning to sound like a broken record here, but I mean, none of your other contributors are addressing the issue, and that there's probably tens of billions of debt out there that's not going to be repaid, and I mean, unless and until that issue is faced up to, we're going to remain stuck in the mess that we're in.
That's a fair point, Bill, isn't it?
Well, there are two things I want to say about this. Firstly, our good friend Whitey Boy has got a point. The second thing I want to say is that there are two issues here. There's can't pay and won't pay. The banks, as individual lenders to different people, have got to separate out who just can't pay from those who won't pay.
That's what Richard was talking about. That's the moral hazard. The person will pretend
I'm aware
to
of
be...
that. I'm talking about solutions, which you asked for. So, therefore, to separate out these, you've also got to change the bankruptcy laws. The bankruptcy laws are a sine qua non. They have to be changed.
Big
so
words,
that if somebody wants to go bust and start again, they can, and it doesn't condemn them to
what
a
is a sine
prison.
qua non for those of us who didn't do that?
Absolutely no alternative.
Something
it's
you
a Thatcher job. There is no alternative. Do you remember, Margaret?
Okay. Yeah. All right.
So I'll just say, Mark, that the bottom line is, and Richard will tell you that this is true, there has to be a change in the bankruptcy laws, and individual banks are the only places to separate the can't pays from the won't pays. And I think that whatever you call it, Richard, it's basically a write-off of debt from people who won't pay. And in the old days, they used to be chucked in prison. Nowadays, we have a different attitude.
What types of changes are you talking about in the bankruptcy legislation? Are you simply talking about reducing the term of bankruptcy, or are you talking about, for example, removing the exemption on mortgages that prevents a person declaring bankruptcy on the grounds of mortgage debt alone?
Yes, both. Definitely both. I think if you think about it, and I believe in society, I don't believe that you should kill individuals one after the other, because we are interrelated and interdependent. What you're saying is, I'm agreeing with you, and I think your summation there is very accurate.
Let's go with a couple more texts. JP says mortgage debt relief is simple. The big banks take the hit. End of story. Don't complicate the matter.
Well, the banks,
and we take the hit too, because there are big banks. It's not the end of the story, sadly.
The banks, a number of the banks are already getting debts written off anyway in the form of discounted bond buybacks. That is effectively a debt write-off. So that should be passed down to the mortgage borrowers.
Frank from Dublin. Mark, surely the solution is to reduce the mortgage to the current market value of the house. The banks should take the hit for the difference between the overpriced original and current market value mortgage.
That is ridiculous, because that throws moral hazard straight out the door. That is completely absurd.
It's also ridiculous.
Basically, hold on there for a second. What we need to do in this country is we need to solve this problem, because without solving this problem and the overhang on banks' business loans, because the banks has to look at their entirety of their financing, unless we get to the bottom of this, we won't have small and medium businesses funded from the banks at all. This is urgent, Mark. We've got to sort out this.
At the moment, the texters are the people coming up with the solutions. Here's another one. As someone in negative equity and still paying my mortgage on my first entry-level house, I get the concept of moral hazard, but surely letting the restructuring of mortgages to allow borrowers pay off the principal rather than the front-loading of interest could be allowed. Anybody?
Yeah, I go for that. That's part of the solution.
Well,
Mark?
Yeah.
Over
to you.
Look, I mean, there's some mechanism. Look, I mean, property prices are down by at least 43%, are going to fall further. Some mechanism has to be found to protect those who have mortgages that they will never be able to repay. And I mean, some mechanism has to be found to help those who have the ability to repay some of it. And look, we have to address this problem. And dickering around it is not going to solve it.
Well, the tax system and the borrower's records with the bank can actually be used to identify those who can't pay and those who won't pay. In this economy, you cannot earn a wage without having a bank account, because most employers pay people by electronic transfer. So,
all right, Niall in Sandyford also goes with that last texter saying, why don't the government let people pay back the principal borrowed and drop the interest rate? Laura?
Because how will the banks work if that happens? And I know no one cares how the banks work, but we actually do care because we own half the whole banking sector. If the banks don't earn interest, the banks won't have money. Then we have to put more money into the banks. It's not like there's a big pool of money out there. And I can see, because we put like 70 billion into the banks, people think there's a big pool of money out there. Infinitely, there isn't. That 70 billion we are now painfully paying back through the bailout programme. The money has to come from somewhere.
Okay, what about negative equity? What about all the people out there who want to trade up, need to trade up, growing families?
That's happening.
How is it happening?
Negative equity mortgages, we also confirmed last week, are happening. So if you are currently...
On a case-by-case, cute whore, don't tell everybody basis.
And that is wrong. And I do firmly believe, and I've said this, I think that the central bank should... I mean, the central bank said, we have given guidelines to banks, but it's not suitable for everyone, so we're not going to let them advertise. They should be giving guidelines to the public. It should be up on the central bank website. It should be in every bank's website, under what circumstances you can do this. And there should be regular reporting. We should know how many cases it has happened in and under what circumstances. Otherwise, you will have a situation where only people who are on good terms with their bank manager get that, and that is wrong.
Yep. There is a problem here, which you're not identifying, Laura, which is this, and which Dan White has actually identified. Prices are still slipping in the market. There's no market for housing. So therefore, the banks' hazard themselves for the financing is still in jeopardy. So the banks have to fudge each individual case, because the fewer people that they have to restructure, the better off they are, and the better off the economy is, because they can actually lend to small and medium businesses. This is the problem.
All right.
I don't agree at all with Laura that the central bank should come out and make some edict to cover everything, because that's ridiculous.
That's not what I suggested at all. All I said was that the central bank should make...
You want rules, baby.
I don't
so that's
want
what that
rules.
means. Well, you just said you did a few minutes ago.
I didn't say I wanted rules. I said I wanted...
Very sexist
criteria.
Terminology, Bill.
There's nothing wrong with that.
I don't care about that. I didn't say I wanted rules. I said I wanted the criteria to publish.
What's
They've already given us the
Okay, Bill. All right.
Dictionary.
One man who's been
no problem. I probably could tell you yourself, but you couldn't.
One man who's been very, very quiet.
Oh, wow.
One man who's been very quiet is Richard Toll. He is an energy expert. I am going to throw the cat amongst the pigeons in a couple of moments by asking a different question. Let's say we did have some scheme of debt forgiveness. How would we pay for it? Well, Morgan Kelly thinks it'll cost $6 billion. I think that's the kind of money we could get from privatising ESB. And after Brendan Ogle admitting that his staff members are on a gravy train, let's talk about that topic after this bit of music. This is the Bell Stars.
Coleman at Large on News Talk 106 to 108.
Gary Neville. He supported Manchester United as a boy, played for them as a teenager, and captained them as a man. Now Gary Neville is ready to reveal all in his brutally honest, no-holds-barred autobiography called Red. Read his official autobiography Red. Available now from all good stores. I'm lucky to have a job. No one's hiring right now. I'd be a fool to leave. It's easier to get a job from a job. Stop. No more excuses. It's time to take your career by the horns. Visit Career Zoo at the Mansion House Dublin on September 10th and 11th. It's got everything you need. Leading employers with professional job opportunities, courses from top education providers, start your own business and more. There are jobs out there. You just need to know where to look. Career Zoo, the Mansion House, September 10th and 11th. Visit careerzoo.ie.
Some things come easy, like the confidence that comes from owning a Cube kitchen. Great German design, reliable customer service and affordable prices. You see, Cube are confident about their kitchens and it shows. Now at 5 great locations in Dublin and Cork and coming soon to Galway. And new to Cube Sandyford, the Caligaris range of living and dining furniture. Cube. Great designs, tiny prices. See cubekitchens.ie. Remember, that's Cube with a K.
News Talk 106 to 108.
The best big name brands out there. Blitz me. 50% or more off recommended retail prices. Blitz me. And extra credit if I get my friends to register. Blitz me.
BlitzMe.ie is Ireland's newest website for smart, price-conscious people. Get a new deal every second day. Recommend it to friends and get up to €5 credit for each one that registers. And unlike other sites, your credit never expires.
BlitzMe.ie. Best products, best prices, simple.
Register now.
It doesn't matter who you are.
It doesn't matter what you want to talk about. If you're stressed, anxious, or unhappy about something.
Anything at all. You can talk to us about it.
We're Samaritans, and you can call us on 08457 90 90 90.
We're here to listen 24 hours a day on 08457 90 90 90.
Samaritans, we think life's worth talking about.
Coleman at Large on News Talk 106 to 108.
Well, that was not the Bell Stars, as I guess you figured out. This is Mark Coleman on Coleman at Large. We are talking about the hot topic of debt forgiveness. We've Dan White on the line, Bill Tormey in studio, Mark McCutcheon in studio, Professor Richard Tull in studio, and we were talking to Laura Noonan as well. Now, let's set aside for the moment the debt forgiveness. Keep your texts coming in on the topic, because we will read them out on 53106. I want to ask, how would we pay for a debt forgiveness scheme? We can argue about what form it should take, but if it exists, it has to be paid for. Last week we played the bowled and redoubtable Brendan Ogle, a clip from him addressing a meeting of IRG last May where he admitted that his members were, quote-unquote, spoilt, quote-unquote, enjoying gravy, and also saying that he would fight, his unions would fight the privatisation of ESB. Richard, I understand that Fine Gael committed in the election to remove the transmission assets of ESB from ESB and transfer them to EirGrid, that this was part of a strategy to improve competition and fairness in the market. That doesn't appear to be happening, does it?
It's a bit unclear what is going on, but it's sure that the government is not in a great hurry to do these things. I'm not sure whether it's off the table or whether it's just being postponed. Okay. In principle, it's a very good plan. What happens at the moment is that the ESB generates a lot of the power. ESB owns the transmission network. The transmission network is operated by EirGrid, but then EirGrid sells it to the distribution companies, and that is ESB again. So EirGrid is boxed in from free sites by the ESB, and essentially there's no independent transmission. So separating the transmission network from ESB would actually help other companies compete better in this market.
It would facilitate the privatisation, the selling off of ESB's power generating assets, would it not?
Sure. It would be, because the transmission grid is a natural monopoly. It's not something that we have just one thing and we need only one of those things, and it would be rather silly to sell that. The same is not true for the distribution network. The same is not true for the generation. The same is not true for the international activities of ESB and those things. I don't think the government has any business of owning companies that do this. So this should be solved.
That's not the only problem with our energy market. I would imagine we're overly dependent on some types of energy as distinct from others.
There's very different opinions on that. At the moment, a lot of our energy, a lot of our electricity comes from natural gas, a bit comes from coal, an increasing share comes from wind. Is that good or is that bad? I don't know. I mean, diversification for diversification's sake doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. Okay. The natural gas market is fairly liquid, so...
All right, Dan White, you're still online. ESB, to privatise or not to privatise?
Well, I mean, unlike Richard, I'm not an expert on energy matters, but I mean, on the issue of the transmission assets, the reason that the assets haven't been transferred, of course, has been the opposition of those self-same ESB unions. So, I mean, any ESB privatisation or hiving off of the transmission assets will require the government to stand up to the ESB unions. Now, I see no appetite for that yet.
Could it be, you say the word yet, maybe it's a battle that they're going to fight, but not just at the moment?
I suspect it's a battle they'll have to fight, because I mean, in terms of privatisations, the ESB is the standout candidate.
Bill, you still are a member of the Fine Gael parish. We'll talk about how long that association is going to last in about half an hour. But assuming that you're still belonging to that parish, what do you think Fine Gael are up to? Will they come good on their election promise to do what Richard said they should do?
Pat Rabbit is in pole position on this one, and you've been bringing it up for a couple of weeks. And I'm not altogether convinced that selling the ESB is necessarily a great idea. On the other hand...
Even the generation? I mean, we kind of agree. I think everybody agrees.
Yeah, because
the state should hold on to
I tell you why.
The infrastructure. But
I think that there should be, unlike Richard says that he doesn't see a particular reason why there should be diversity of sources for energy development, and I don't see it quite like that, Richard.